Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of Portsmouth City Council Cabinet. I'm Councillor Steve Pitt. I'm the leader of Portsmouth City Council, and I'll be the chair of this meeting. If the continuous fire alarm should sound, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts, and please reassemble at the turning circle at the end of King Henry Street past the Park building. Please note this is not the usual place by Queen Victoria's statue, because you might have noticed there's a rather large ice rink in front of it. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust fire marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. Everyone speaking via a microphone will be recorded and broadcast on the website, including those making deputations, of which there are none. Members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly they do not wish to be recorded. Please can everyone use the microphones, and please remember to switch them off when they have finished. We've all read the reports, so officers, please just highlight any developments that have occurred since publication, or if required, give a short summary of the paper. We'll now proceed to introductions, and we'll start with officers on my left. Peter, please.
Peter Bell, City Solicitor, thank you.
Natalie Brammer-Pearl, Chief Executive.
Anna Martin, Democratic Services.
Chris Ward, Director of Finance.
Richard Lee, Assistant Director, Culture, Leisure and Regulated Services.
I'm Gerald Glenn Jackson. I'm not an officer. I'm one of the Cabinet members and Cabinet member for Transport.
Hugh Mason, Cabinet member for Planning Policy.
Susie Horton, Cabinet member for Children, Families and Education.
Kimberly Barrett, Cabinet Member for Climate Change and Green Leaders City.
Yeah, Councillor Lee Hunt, the Cabinet Member for Resources. I'd also cover Nelson Wardridge, Stamford, Tipner, North End and Buckland.
I'm Darren Sanders. I'm the Cabinet Member for Housing and Tackling Homelessness, and Chair, I may have to leave this meeting at 30 minutes notice, as I'm going to have to help put up a Christmas tree for a Christmas market I'm helping in this afternoon.
And on that point, he's just reminded me, I've got to leave here at 1:45 because I've got to get somewhere.
Matthew Williamson, Cabinet Member for Community Wellbeing, Health and Care.
Councillor Russell Simpson, Hilsey Ward, Deputy Leader of Portsmouth Independence Party.
Matt Gummerson, Assistant Director of Public Health.
Oh, sorry. Lucy Howard, Head of Planning Policy.
James Harris, Senior Local Democracy Officer.
And we're also joined by Marie Cole this afternoon. Hello, Marie, nice to see you. And we've got the news with us as well, so welcome both. Okay, we have apologies today from Councillor Ian Holder, who's been called into work to cover sickness, and Councillor Dave Ashmore, who is unwell. Members, any declarations of interest? I see none. Item 3 is a record of the previous decision meeting on the 31st of October. Members, are we happy with the minutes? We are. Good, they're agreed. Item 4 is appointment to outside bodies, Elementary Education Foundation. James, I believe you're reporting on this.
Thank you, Leader. As Cabinet members have read the report, I'll just give a very short introduction. So the report before Cabinet is a follow-up to the annual report, which is considered each June, after which the Elementary Education Foundation was left with one vacancy. A nomination has come forward from the Leader to appoint Councillor Sanders to this vacancy. That is the matter before Cabinet today. As per the report, it's worth noting that the position is that of a trustee.
Thank you, James, and you're drawing attention to that because trustees have certain legal responsibilities, but it's primarily to always act in the best interests of the trust to which they're appointed. Councillor Sanders, are you happy to accept the nomination?
Yes.
Colleagues, are we happy to nominate that Darren joins the Elementary Education Foundation Trust? That is agreed. Thank you, James.
Chair, just for Councillor Sanders' diary, 9 o'clock in the morning on the 6th of December on parade.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda today is item 5. That's the Hampshire Minerals and Waste Plan, and this report's presented by the Head of Planning Policy, Lucy Howard. Lucy, over to you.
Thank you. The City Council is the Minerals and Waste Planning Authority for the City. We are working with our partner authorities of Southampton City Council, Hampshire County Council, New Forest National Park Authority and South Downs National Park Authority on a partial update of the Hampshire Minerals and Waste Plan, which includes Portsmouth. I've sent you links to all the papers, including the draft plan, and I'm asking you to recommend to full council that we approve the plan for pre-submission consultation. The report sets out the main points of interest in the document, including how carbon neutrality can be achieved in minerals and waste by 2050 in the county. There are no particular matters of concern for the City Council in the plan. The consultation will run for 8 weeks in the new year, and then, assuming no matters arise that the partner authorities consider go to the heart of soundness, the plan will be submitted for examination. On adoption, the Minerals and Waste Plan will form part of the development plan for the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Councillor Vernon-Jackson.
I just want to check with Mr Bolf. I am a City Council appointed Director of Portico, which imports aggregates. Does that mean I need to declare an interest?
I'm happy with that, Gerald. That's fine.
Thank you.
Okay, members, any questions on this? Any further comments? No, in that case, are we happy that we agreed this and pass it through to full council? Thank you very much, Lucy. Cheers. Item 6 on the agenda today is the Portsmouth Port Health Authority at Portsmouth International Port, or the joys of the Tory government. Richard Lee, over to you, please.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Chair. There are no real updates in terms of the report itself. It is very current. It was updated from the briefing session, but there's been no subsequent updates necessary thereafter. However, I'm very happy to run through some of the key highlights within the report, should you believe that to be the case. Thank you. The purpose of the report is to explore 3 options in respect to the Portsmouth PHA. The report asks some fundamental questions. Is PCC able to deliver a PHA which will meet the needs of the government? Quite unusually, perhaps, the report contains 10 recommendations. They're very clear, hopefully. I'll just run through a couple of the key ones. That the Cabinet approves option 1, that the Cabinet acknowledges that funding for the PHA is only available until the end of April 2024, but there is a possibility upon application that that could be extended to the end of July 2024. Thereafter, a full cost recovery mechanism, which is cost neutral to the port itself, has to be delivered through charges to importers, and that there is a risk to the Portsmouth taxpayer should that not be available through that mechanism. Recommendation D is that we continue to engage with the government and write to them with regards to the additional burden upon PCC, the situation regarding the funding, and that previous directions from the government have been changed. H is a narrative to that change, and I'll just highlight what those changes are in a wee while. And the last recommendation, if the Cabinet does not choose to adopt option 1, should we adopt option 2 or option 3? Quite clearly, the PHA is required by the government to deliver biosecurity controls following our exiting the EU. Biosecurity is of acute importance to the government and the UK Health Security Agency with regards to diseases coming into the country such as avian flu, African swine fever and foot and mouth. Our journey with regards to the government has been complicated over the last 4 years. More recently, there has been 4 programme delivery models, 3 of which have been suspended, and we're left with the current one, which was introduced via the target operating model in April 2023. That model was changed to the border target operating model in August 2023, and it's worth highlighting to anybody who's read them that these are general principles only and should not be considered to be a manual in terms of how the PHA should operate. We need to be ready to deliver the official control regime by the end of April 2024, so approximately 9 weeks away. However, the next key target date in relation to the PHA and the BCP is the designation of the BCP to handle official controls in terms of food, which the PHA will be responsible for. So we are told to be ready. What happens if we are not ready? Well, the government have introduced a couple of initiatives. One is called the Ecosystem of Trust, which will allow traders to sign up, a trusted trader scheme effectively run by the government, and traders will be able to import through that scheme, and therefore we will not have to deliver official controls in regards to those goods if they are accepted on the scheme. They've also introduced something called the TODCOF, which is the Timed Out Decision Contingency feature. This is part of their platform of official controls. And effectively, if we are not present at the BCP at the end of April and are unable for whatever reason to deliver the government's regime, the TODCOF will kick in and enable goods to travel through the PIP, the Portsmouth International Port, even though we are not there. There is a possibility, however, as we are unable to deliver official controls as a result of the Trusted Trader Scheme or the TODCOF, that will affect our full cost recovery system moving forward. It's no exaggeration that over the last few years I've had hundreds of meetings with various agencies of the government. However, more recently, the government wrote to us on the 10th of October 2023 telling us to get ready. Appendix 1. We wrote back to the government on the 24th of October 2023 expressing our concerns with regards to funding, staffing and the full cost recovery mechanism, Appendix 2. We received a further response from the government on the 14th of November 2023, Appendix 3, but again they reiterated their advice to us to get ready and to start recruitment. So what does getting ready look like? We have 7 staff within the PHA currently. 12 months ago, we had approximately 30 staff, so we were ready. However, we had to reduce that cohort to 7 as a result of the government stopping their funding and telling us to remove the staff from employment. The 7 remaining staff were seconded to AFA and DEFRA with regards to African swine fever and avian flu. So the government is telling us to get ready. We can retain the 7 staff we currently have, and we can recruit an additional 12 members of staff. We need to prepare for the designation on the 5th of February, and in Q3 we were able to apply for funding for those existing staff and equipment to get ready at the BCP for designation, which is 17 weeks before we need to start our operations. That funding was £150,000 for staff and £180,000 for equipment and a contract for official veterinarians, which we are required to have under the official control regime. So the options in front of you today are option 1, begin recruitment of the 12 staff. We estimate that we require 28 staff to operate 365, 18 hours a day with OV contractors to deliver the official control regime. The cost of that is estimated to be between £2.4 and £2.7 million per year. The estimated costs are set out within Table 1 in Section 9. We must recover those costs through the full cost recovery regime or fund it from other sources, i.e. the Portsmouth taxpayer. Information provided by the government estimates that up to 40,000 documentary checks are required each year, and between 1 and 30% of those will either require an ID and or a physical check thereafter. Again, with government narratives, they have estimated that a documentary check takes 25 minutes and a physical and identity check take 15 minutes for both, i.e. 50 minutes for ID and 50 minutes for physical. Simple time analysis suggests that we need 28 staff to operate 365, 18 hours a day. Irrespective of that, we have difficulties in staff recruitment because we've let a lot of staff go, and we feel it is unlikely that we'll be able to recruit even the 12 staff that the government have allowed us to recruit over the next few weeks. Even if we have those staff, there is a concern that we will not be able to train those staff and enable them to be competent in the delivery of official controls by the end of April 2024. And of course, we need to be ready for designation on the 5th of February. Option 2 is only to retain the 7 staff, but not to recruit new staff. This will minimise the risk to the Portsmouth taxpayer should the full cost recovery regime not be adequate. However, this could lead to delays at the PIP. We would have a limited presence at the BCP, and we'd be heavily reliant on the Trusted Trader Scheme and the TODCOF. This would mean there is a risk to biosecurity, a risk to importers using another point of entry, and obviously a risk of decreasing income through the PIP. Option 3, that we are unable to provide a PHA, and we would notify the government of that. The risks to the Portsmouth taxpayer are too high, and full cost recovery is considered unlikely. There are risks involved with this, the likelihood that importers will change their preference point of entry because they'll be unable to import foods of medium and high risk through the PIP, and obviously the resultant risk to income of the PIP as a result. It's really quite hard to design a matrix which can discuss the risks. However, I've attempted to do so in section 6. Option 1 is considered a very high risk strategy. Option 2, an exceptionally high risk strategy. Option 3, an unacceptably high risk strategy. Please have relevance to section 7 with additional actions that will be required. So in summary, the preferred option recommended is option 1, that we continue to engage with the government, that we are aware that our operational readiness is considered to be low. If I was to rate that readiness, I would consider most to be red with some amber, but we acknowledge the risks in adopting any of the options put forward to you this afternoon. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. Councillor Bernard-Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. This is an extremely worrying report. I think we all know that the citizens of Portsmouth have been badly shortchanged by the government's decision about building the white elephant of the border control point. That they provided £17 million to build something that's cost 23 million, and that the citizens of this city had to find the extra £6 million that the government did not provide to build something that they told us we had to provide and gave us exact specifications of how it should be. So every citizen of this city is having to pay because the government didn't. Now, it's getting even worse. And I can understand people saying, oh, this is terrible because of Brexit. Actually, this is because of Brexit, because before then things were able to flow in and out without these checks. But just to say this is because of Brexit is lazy, because the government could have sorted this problem out. So this is the choice of the government not to sort this out. So I think that citizens of Portsmouth are faced with some really quite difficult decisions here. Either we have to say that we as taxpayers are going to have to pick up an extra £2.5 million a year in terms of having to not provide services in the city or pay extra council tax, which is a very bad option, or we go for something worse. And it might be that we have to go for something worse. It might be that we decide that with the pressure on local government finance, as it is, and the pressure on the council's budget, that we cannot afford that extra £2.5 million a year. Because the government is likely to allow Dover, where they've given them a fully subsidised BCP, full cost for them. They didn't have to find a penny for it. And therefore they've got a lot of people coming through, so their cost recovery basis is likely to be very low. And we won't be able to compete with that. So we may end up having to to find this £2.5 million, or at the port we may have to say we cannot afford that. That we cannot afford to allow meat products, animal products through, and seeds through the port, and therefore we will not accept those things coming into the UK on the ferries coming to Portsmouth. Now that is a risk to the city, because that would reduce the number of people, the number of traders who would come through the city with their trucks with those products. But it'd also be an enormous risk to the economy of the UK, because we're the second busiest cross-channel ferry port in the country, and it would push all of that trade into Dover. So would there be a single point of critical failure for the UK economy? Now, I've talked to Grant Shapps about this quite a lot, because he was extremely worried, and he wants us to be doing more, not less, because he doesn't want the UK economy held to ransom because there's only one port of entry. And we know what happens. Striking fishermen, strikes on the other side of the channel, can mean that nothing gets through Dover. So this report, to me, is extremely worrying in terms of the UK economy and our security. What I hope happens is the UK government understands that it is a government for the United Kingdom, and that if we want the UK economy not to be at this level of risk, that they take up the cost that's going to flow from this, and understand this is a national issue. I have no confidence that they will do so, but my hope is that they will. But I think this is one of the most worrying reports, one of the most serious reports I have ever seen coming to this council in the last 20 years, and we should take Richard Lee's warnings very, very seriously. I think we're doing the right thing by trying to step in and sort out the mess the government has created, but it may be that we cannot afford to do so, and we'll have to take that decision in the future, but the recommendations here are right.
Thank you, Gerald. Lee?
I mean, Gerald has set the context, but I find it incredibly, we have Penny Mordaunt here in our city, the former Minister for Trade, a massively influential person in the current Conservative government. Yet she seems unable to bang heads together up there in London. They seem to want to play Russian roulette with our port. They have already, excuse the word, leader, they have already shafted Portsmouth for 20 million quid over the boarding crossing building, that white elephant that Gerald talks about. And then they come here with brinkmanship. All you can say, brinkmanship, they got us on the hook for 20 million, brinkmanship on this, lastminute.com. They're just too busy fussing around up there, worrying about their own positions, to actually get on and support the people of Portsmouth. What have this Conservative government got against the city of Portsmouth? Here we are, working, and the taxpayers of Portsmouth funding a massively successful Portsmouth International Port. Everybody reads about how efficient it is, how green it is, how we are making it one of the most neutral ports in the country. Yeah, and here they are, constantly frustrating our attempts to make the business there work properly and safely, as described by Mr. Lee. And we have this brinkmanship going on all of the time. It's very difficult to know what to do next, because we are being asked to make savings again by central government, yet they don't support us. They make life more difficult for this council and for local government generally, and for the taxpayers of Portsmouth, who have been very good at investing into this massively successful port. And here we see now the government is taking us for granted and saying, well, they can bung some more money in, but it's just not on anymore. It's really wrong. And Penny Mordaunt should go into number 10 and bang some heads together. She should get some action done, and she should make sure that this is funded properly in the way that Gerald has described.
Thank you very much. Richard, just a couple of quick questions. In terms of where this could end up as an end game, if there is no more funding, the strong likelihood is that the government are just going to lift more and more checks for any imports which are coming from EU origin. Is that fair?
I think they've set out very clearly what we will need to carry out checks on, and generally it is medium and high risk products. Low risk products, they are considering a check regime or a method of paying for a regime, but yeah, I don't think they will change the type of product that we're testing for to facilitate a better cost recovery mechanism.
No. So in other words, they want us to do something that's actually, let's be honest, impossible.
It's a very difficult equation. The equations hopefully are fairly well set out in the report in terms of having sufficient officers at the BCP, acquiring such a high number of officers in a very short period of time, the funding ending potentially fully ending at the end of July, and it does leave the Portsmouth taxpayer at risk, because funding any official control regime through any port is highly unlikely to deliver a full cost recovery, cost neutral position.
So we're paying for their mess. I won't ask you to answer that.
Leader, can I just very quickly, because I know I want to be away as well, but this is hugely important for our food safety. And Mr. Lee, I think you might describe to me, if I remember rightly, we had a conversation a little while ago about how successful your team had been at identifying, I think it's pork products coming from Eastern Europe, and they were found in barrels sloshing about. Is my memory serving me well, or am I just... Because we talked about that a little while ago, and it just is an example of just how important it is to have these checks at the port for our food safety.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, within the report, biosecurity is a key element for the UK government and the UK Health Agency. So they have real risks of diseases entering the country if the check regime is not as the legislation will require. And you're right, Councillor, the 7 staff that we currently have are carrying out checks in terms of illegal pork products coming through the PIP, and they do that on a regular basis.
It's pretty scary.
Yeah, I mean, one of the issues that strikes me as particularly ridiculous in this is that we had the staff, we've had to let the staff go, and now we're going to advertise for jobs that all the people that looked at them last time are going to think, well, hang on a minute, what happened there then? Oh, I'm not going to apply for that because they might change their minds again. And actually, as we say in the report, that's quite a strong possibility. So they're not only asking us to recruit people, they're asking us to recruit people to jobs that might not exist by the time they've applied for them. Yeah, some of it was theirs, but the principle remains. Anyway, members, we are where we are. This is a difficult situation by a long chalk, but we are backed up against the wall, and we are yet again reliant on the government coming forward with another amendment to their plan that actually gives us some confidence that what they plan to do will stack up. I don't think any of us should be holding our breath. Are we happy to accept option 1 as stated within the report? Okay, reluctantly, given 3 bad options, we're going for the one that is currently assessed as being the least bad. So thank you for presenting today, Richard.
Chair, can I request that we do the acquisition item next, please?
Yes, we can do that. Okay, 2 seconds. So anyway, that's the conclusion of item 6. We're adopting 1. We got a request from Councillor Sanders to go to item 8 on the agenda, which is the exclusion of press and public. Members, with the confirmation from the City Solicitor, what I'm proposing to do is to not exclude press and public from the meeting, but to make it very clear that nobody is to discuss anything that's on the orange paper. Are members happy with that? Is that acceptable, Peter? Yeah, okay, cool. In which case we'll proceed to item 9, which is, he's just turning the page, the housing revenue account residential, I've got the port stuck in my head, residential stock portfolio acquisition. And who is leading the presentation? Is that you, James Hill, please?
Thank you, Leader, and good afternoon, Cabinet. So my name's James Hill, Director of Housing, Neighbourhood and Building Services, and I'll just briefly introduce the report. So the report you have before you outlines an exciting opportunity for the City Council to acquire a significant property portfolio from the Housing Association Clarion. I have a range of officers with me who have been involved in the work to appraise this opportunity on your behalf with the support of other directorates and external consultants. As the report highlights, we have been subject to a non-disclosure agreement, but on the 20th of November we were able to publish this report and now only remain subject to a partial non-disclosure agreement which prevents the disclosure of commercially sensitive parts of the transaction, and that detail is in the exempt papers. On the 20th of November, we offered all councillors an opportunity to be briefed on the report, and we've shared a presentation with all councillors with an open invite to ask questions. We also briefed our residents' consortium on the 20th of November and will further update them on the 7th of December. The report is a key decision requiring full council decision, and the recommendations ask that Cabinet endorse the report and then for full council on the 12th of December to agree the recommendations with regard to the funding required to acquire the properties. The decision is subject to the completion of outstanding due diligence and financial appraisal. It is also subject to Clarion's completion of a formal stock transfer consultation and Clarion's board approval. The report contains the timelines involved, and assuming the decisions fall into place, the completion and the point of transfer will happen in mid-February, and at that point we will need to have all the systems in place to transfer and manage the properties. The work to ensure a smooth transition for Clarion's residents and to have our systems ready is well underway, though isn't without challenge, and we are extremely grateful to all involved supporting this work alongside other priorities, and particularly our corporate, IT and HR service teams. The report outlines the risks and is clear that the acquisition doesn't increase the amount of social housing available to the City Council and other councils where the Clarion stock is situated. Those councils currently nominating to the Clarion stock will continue to do so. The acquisition is, though, about an investment that benefits the City Council's housing revenue account in the longer term. So by acquiring 818 units of accommodation, with the income from those properties coming into the City Council's housing revenue account, the acquisition supports the long-term sustainability of the housing revenue account. Clarion residents will benefit from receiving the same level of service as our current tenants and leaseholders. On balance, the view of the officer team and our external consultants remains that this is a rare opportunity to increase the property holding of the housing revenue account and represents value for money. There are no amendments to the report you have before you, Leader, and the officers are very happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, James. The report is before us. Councillor Sanders.
Thank you very much. I'll say probably a bit more if we agree to all this at the full council meeting in a couple of weeks' time, but just three things firstly. Firstly, thank you to the independent Labour and Liberal Democrat councillors who've come along to our various briefings about this. We're very grateful for their detailed and honest questions, and also to the Residents' Consortium as well. And it's not in the report, but I just wanted to highlight two of the things that they've highlighted to us. Firstly, obviously I won't go into the details of the money, but throughout, we have operated our financial modelling on a reasonable worst-case scenario. Not a realistic one, but a reasonable worst-case one. We've seen too many councils be secretive in major transactions with costing lots of money and operate on pipe dreams. That is not what we are doing. We're operating on a reasonable worst-case scenario. Secondly, whilst there was broad but not unanimous support for this amongst the Residents' Consortium, one or two people were concerned as to whether this would affect the repair levels that they currently receive, and the answer to that is no. On that basis, I'm more than happy to ask that Cabinet approves this report.
Yeah, I just want to congratulate everybody involved in this position. It's a very progressive decision by this Liberal Democrat council, again, notwithstanding the support you've had cross-party, but it shows great leadership, and it shows tremendous trust. And I know also that the residents, people in my ward, Nelson Ward, are already thrilled that this is about to happen, and they've been going online saying how pleased they are, and we've perhaps all seen it. So that just goes to say something. The City Council is a good landlord. Sometimes we take a little bit too long to do things, but everything is always done, and people have trust in us. And you are talking about trust. You can look at all the surveys we do. People have trust in what we do. So it's a tremendous opportunity. I'm glad one that we're grabbing with both hands.
Thank you, Lee. Obviously, I endorse that, the comments of both you and Darren. Hugh?
Just a minor point. 6.6, you are TUPEing across a number of Clarion employees. How many, and will this have any knock-on effects on our own employees?
We haven't yet been able to confirm the number. We're still in discussion, and as part of the due diligence, we are auditing the existing work of those officers to ensure that they can come across. We are hopeful that we'll have at least 2. In terms of impact on our existing workforce, none. And what we hope that they will bring with them is local knowledge of the stock that they've been maintaining. So we're happy to move forward. We just want to make sure that we've legally covered our responsibilities.
Okay, members, anything further? No, in which case, once again, congratulations to the team for getting this to where it's currently at. We look forward to the I dotting and T crossing part of it to happen now. So members, are we happy to approve the adoption of proposal option, oh no, sorry, I'm on the wrong flipping page. It's because I turned it back, it's Darren's fault. Are we happy to endorse the contents of the report and then refer the other recommendations in 2, which is 2.1 to 2.6, onto full council?
Agree.
Okay, all agreed.
And
Thank you
excuse
very much.
me, I've got to get off to a GP appointment.
That's fine. And Darren's got a hospital thing or a Christmas tree thing. I'm not sure which it is. Okay, thank you both. We'll now go back to item 7 on the agenda, which is the item on unauthorised encampments. And that's Colette Hall to present, I believe.
So this report follows a notice of motion that was brought to full council on the 18th of July regarding unauthorised encampments within Portsmouth, and updates Cabinet on the location and duration of unauthorised encampments on PCC land. We've included a breakdown of the costs where possible, an update of preventative measures applied, and information about consultation and support to residents. Just a few highlights. Section 3 goes through the background and legal basis for managing unauthorised encampments, highlighting that the Gypsy, Roma and Traveller communities are a legally recognised ethnic group, and the community wardens are the lead team for the council on management of such encampments and work closely with other departments and the police. The process for dealing with unauthorised encampments is shared in Appendix 5, and that's shared every spring with all members to remind them of the process, which is when we typically start to see encampments in the city. Section 4 provides the information about the numbers of unauthorised encampments over the past 7 years, and we've amended it to show it by ward as well, and an update on changes to powers which took effect in 2022, effectively giving the police expanded powers to deal with encampments. We've got a good relationship with the police in recent years to manage encampments, and we joined their daily management meeting, which has been really useful in terms of this particular issue. We've listed in further in 4.1.6 the table of legal actions that we've taken to deal with unauthorised encampments, and we've also detailed the average costs in 4.2. We've set out the preventative measures taken. It's not an exhaustive list, as we've historically taken a number of ad hoc measures, but Appendix 3 shows the ones that we've got records of. And last year we made a capital bid to improve a number of commonly occupied sites. And the final section, 4.4, sets out how residents can report issues relating to unauthorised encampments to either PCC or the police, and also highlights the Gypsy and Traveller accommodation assessment, which is in the process of being updated as part of the work for the local plan and is part of the wider assessment of housing need. And just one other thing, that the Director for Housing, Neighbourhoods and Buildings has invited opposition spokesperson, the Cabinet member, to a meeting on the 5th of December to discuss the report and our approach and how we're dealing with unauthorised encampments in the city.
Thank you very much, Colette. Always a tricky issue that we have to deal with every year, but I think the report does address all of the main items that need to be thought about, and it will welcome that cross-party discussion opportunity. As we said, this was a response to a notice of motion, and I think that was, as much as anything, a need to make sure that everyone's clear about what we have done, what we are doing, and what we continue to do, and the fact that that annual update on what to do is sent out to all members. Anyone got any questions, Hugh?
Two questions. Page 9, Appendix 3 of your report, Pembroke Gardens, you're putting in new boulders and tree planting. Can you assure us that the boulders will be much more difficult to remove than the ones which you had there previously? That's my first question. And the second one concerns Appendix 4, where the clear-up costs on Milton Common are markedly higher than anywhere else. Is this because of the nature of Milton Common or the nature of the people that we get there?
Okay, so the first one, the works have already been carried out by Culture and Leisure to Pembroke Gardens. So what you see there currently is what is been put in place. So there's no more that we're doing there. That's what's already in place. I think the trouble with the boulders is we could make them massive and they could still move them if they wanted to. So we've tried to make them as big as possible, make it as awkward as possible, but obviously want to retain the character of the area. That's important. And in terms of the Milton Common encampment, that was a large encampment with a lot of waste issues and items left behind, which is why the clear-up costs were so significant. The clear-up costs usually relate to how big the encampment's got, so and how long it's there for.
Thanks, Chair. And a useful report. I think the bit that worries me about this is that there was a new act that went through Parliament last year, and it was billed as something that would help stop illegal encampments. And I was talking with the Police Commissioner for Hampshire, who said to me she'd had to tell Hampshire MPs that it was going to make not the slightest bit of difference whatsoever. And we are left in the position that if there's an illegal encampment on private land, it's very easy to have it removed. When there's an illegal encampment upon public land, as like South Sea Common or Milton Common or whatever, it takes much, much longer, and there is no level playing field. And that is an outrageous position for this government to put us in, where we are left having to pick up large bills because the government won't give us the powers to act as any other private landlord. And I think we need to write to the government to ask them to rectify this, because it's the people of this city who are having to pick up the bill for clearing up because the government didn't get the act right and won't give the council the same powers as any other private landlord or owner of land. And it's an absolute disgrace, and the government really need to get their finger out and get this sorted.
Thank you. Colette?
I think that if there's an encampment on private land, the landowner still needs to seek an injunction. The police can use their 61 powers regardless of the ownership status. And I think by us joining the daily management meeting, we have had greater use of that over the last few months, where appropriate. They can't just use it indiscriminately. They have to use it where appropriate.
And I think Colette, I think you're right, that the police have got a bit more backbone recently, and therefore are prepared to use some of the legal powers they have at their disposal. Their failure to do so in the past has been very disappointing, but there remains a difference between what the legal position on private land and public land in terms of illegal encampments, and that isn't right.
Colette?
Well, I've answered that, I think. I haven't really got anything to add to that.
Okay. The only thing I wanted to add is that we sometimes, as a council, get criticised for not doing enough to prevent people accessing our land. I think I would just like to take the opportunity to make it very clear that we are seeing increasing persistence in people in gaining access, with locks being cut, in one instance potentially melted by acid to make it weaker so that it could be cut, and boulders being towed away by 4x4s or even more significant vehicles, etc. So we are doing what we can, but we have to take proportionate measures on this issue, and we should also point out that some of these unauthorised encampments that we get on our land do not leave loads of litter and cause a lot of mess. It's not fair that everybody gets branded in exactly the same way. There are some people who do not respect the land that they've managed to access, but there are some that do, and I think it's proportionate that we reflect that. Members, we're happy to note the report and refer this on to full council for consideration. Okay, thank you very much. That now takes us to item 10, jumping around the agenda a bit to accommodate Councillor Sanders, and that will be the Revenue Budget Monitoring 2023-24 second quarter to end of September 2023. Chris Ward.
Thank you, Leader. As you say, yes, this is the half-year budget report, and in overall terms, it's a positive story in that the Council's overall budget position for the half year is broadly balanced. It's just a very small £200,000 forecast overspend at this point. But there are some underlying areas of financial stress within the Council and the services of the Council. So you'll have noticed in the report that children, families and education are experiencing a forecast £2 million overspend. Community wellbeing, health and care, a £2.8 million forecast overspend. Housing and tackling homelessness, £1.6 million. And there is, of course, the pay award that was recently agreed that is £1.8 million over the amount that the Council provided for within its budget. That said, there are obviously some offsetting forecast underspendings in order to bring the overall position back into broad balance. £4.9 million additional income through the Council's Treasury management activities, largely as a consequence of rising interest rates, but also additional surplus cash balances that the Council has this year. And some of the costs that I've mentioned, particularly around homelessness or temporary accommodation and the pay award, the Council had budgeted to accommodate those within its overall contingency provision, so that is available to offset those additional costs. Taking that all together, the Council is broadly balanced at this point. There are some warnings, of course, in terms of we will have to look at some of those areas of financial stress, particularly in the care services, and budget for those appropriately in next year's budget. So something for us to be careful about and to properly plan as we go forward into next financial year. Happy to take any questions.
Chris, I just wanted to make it clear for anyone watching or our colleagues from the press, when we say overspent, those areas that are primarily overspent, such as the temporary accommodation budget and adult and children's social care, these are statutory demand-led services. We have to provide them, so they are, or else they are over the amount that we've allocated in the cash limit. These are not things where we have choices.
Exactly right. Many of these costs that we're experiencing are almost unavoidable.
Okay, and worth noting that we're not in the same position as our neighbouring authorities in Southampton and Hampshire at the moment, where I believe Southampton's latest forecast is a £20 million in year saving just to get to a position of balance, and Hampshire is saying that by 2025 they'll have a £132 million budget deficit, but we are not immune to the pressures that they're under, and we need to be ever vigilant and managing our money carefully. Gerald?
Well, I think exactly the same point. I think it is right for us to record our thanks to Chris and his team for the work you do, not only in terms of running them accurately, but the discipline that you make us have across all parties to be able to run the finances of the council in a sustainable and sensible long-term way, and we look at councils around us where that's not the tradition and look at the problems that's raised. So even though it's sometimes difficult, but I think we do owe Chris and the finance team an enormous vote of public thanks for the discipline that you do enforce.
Members, anything else? No, in which case it's recommended that we note Council's Treasury Management activities remain within the Treasury Management policy in a period up to 30th September 2023. The actual Treasury Management indicators at 30th of September 23 set out in Appendix A, and the report goes on to full Council on the 12th of December. Members, are we happy? Okay, that's approved then. Taking item 11 now, which is linked to this. It's the Treasury Management Mid-Year Review 2023-24. Chris, back to you.
Thank you, Leader. Not to embarrass you, but you've just read out the recommendations to this item.
Oh, I'm sorry.
As opposed to the item that we were discussing.
It's all the dotting around we're doing today.
So, not much to say on this report, actually. You're right, it's the mid-year Treasury Management report. I mentioned some of it in the previous report in terms of the Council's Treasury Management activities and the forecast underspend of forecast additional income of 4.9 million from those activities. But this report has already been to Governance, Audit and Standards Committee. It's here for you today formally, and it will also be reported on to full Council just as a matter of information in accordance with best practice. The important thing for you to note within this report is that the Council has remained within its Treasury Management policy that was approved by full Council back in March. So it's just an update report to tell you that the Council has remained within all of the policy measures and indicators that were set out in that report in March. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Chris. In which case, to wrap things up, we better also make sure that we note 1, 2 and 3 in the previous item and agree that item 4, are we happy with that? And then we mopped it up one way or the other. Okay, that's fine. Item 12 is another exclusion of press and public item, and again we'll do exactly what we did last time, which is agree not to talk about what's on the orange papers. Is that okay? Peter, are you happy that we can do that for this item as well? Thank you. In which case, we then go to item, that's right, item 12, yeah? And then item 13, which is the forward plan emission notice, application for research funding, pages 131 to 132. And is that you, Matt?
It is, although I'll talk to this, the subsequent
Once
item.
we get to the, yes, okay, just making sure I've got the right place. Takes us to 14, which is the actual report, and that is you, Matt, yes?
It is. Thank you, Leader. So just to note, it's an exempt report due to a strict embargo applied by the funding organisation, which is DHSC, which made very clear that we risk our access to the funding if we put out any public notice about the funding in advance of their coordinated announcement about it, which should happen once all the contracts are signed, certainly before 1st of January. So we bid to the National Institute for Health Research, which is part of the Department of Health and Social Care, to be a health determinants research collaboration. These are about developing local authorities' capacity and capability to conduct high-quality research. And we've been awarded development year funding, which covers the period January 24 to December 24, ahead of a full HDRC for 5 years from the 1st of January 2025. We don't have to bid again. We have to put in a proposal for how we work during the development year, and subject to satisfactorily completing that, we then continue into the full HDRC from 1st of January 2025. We submitted our proposal for what we intend to do during the development year last week, so the 22nd of November, and waiting to hear confirmation that that meets the funding committee's requirements. Assuming it does, we'll then receive a contract, which we have received a draft of, and which we'll then look to sign along with the other HDRCs that will be announced nationally at the same time. There'll then be a coordinated national funding announcement, and will be included within that. Our aim really across the programme, so it's £5 million worth of funding over 5 years, is to build research capacity into existing teams, so not to create a separate research function that sits off to the side, but to make research part of how we do our business that informs decision making across the council, and looking to, as far as possible, make it research that's generated by our communities rather than by academics kind of coming up with an idea and then us working to deliver it, but really to understand what are the issues that are most important and most impactful in addressing health inequalities in Portsmouth by talking to our communities about those and then delivering research that better informs our understanding about how to address those issues. So asking for approval when we get the contract for Helen to sign that as co-director along with James Hill for the HDRC.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Winnington.
Thank you, and obviously by not going into any more detail, I look forward to be able to talk about this in greater things once we have got the go-ahead to go with that. But yes, certainly, I propose that we accept the Cabinet's the recommendation that we have in front of us in item 14.
Thank you very much, Matt. So the first rule about funding is don't talk about funding. So with Councillor Winnington's proposal, are we happy to approve? Okay, thank you very much, Matt. And thank you to everyone. That concludes today's meeting of the Cabinet.